What does it mean to be rich when your bank account is empty? Welcome back to the channel. If you're curious about how some of the world's most influential families maintain their status and power without necessarily having liquid wealth, you're in the right place. Please subscribe if you haven't already, because we dive deep into topics like this regularly. Today, we're exploring the psychology of the broke aristocrat, a fascinating phenomenon that reveals how tradition, social capital, and strategic positioning can matter far more than actual cash. Let's start with a fundamental truth. Wealth and money are not the same thing. Wealth is about assets, networks, and influence. Money is just one form of currency. The broke aristocrat understands this distinction intuitively. They might own a historic family estate worth millions, but struggle to pay the property taxes. They might wear clothes from expensive heritage brands purchased decades ago, yet have no cash for new ones. They attend exclusive social events where admission is based on family name alone, not on who can spend the most. This paradox fascinates psychologists and sociologists because it reveals how deeply humans value status symbols that transcend mere financial transactions. The first mechanism at work is social capital. Social capital refers to the networks, relationships, and community goodwill that an individual or family has accumulated over time. For old money families, social capital was built over generations. A family might have founded a prestigious university in the 1800s, meaning their descendants received preferential treatment in admissions without paying a premium. They might have ancestors who were founding members of exclusive clubs, giving their relatives lifetime membership even if the family's current finances are strained. These intangible assets function exactly like financial capital. They generate returns, open doors, and create opportunities. Consider how this plays out in practice. A member of an old aristocratic family applies for a job at a top-tier law firm. The hiring partner recognizes the family name and the family crest. The interview becomes almost ceremonial. The firm wants the prestige of association. Even if the candidate is mediocre, the firm sees value in the family connection. This is not corruption exactly. It's how social systems have always worked. The broke aristocrat leverages this system because they understand it was designed partly for them. They don't need to compete on credentials alone. They compete on belonging. Tradition is the second pillar supporting this psychology. Tradition creates a sense of continuity and inevitability. When something has been done a certain way for 100 years, it feels natural, right, and eternal. Old money families ritualize their behaviors. Summer homes in specific locations, attendance at particular events, membership in particular clubs, even specific ways of speaking and dressing. These traditions are not expensive in themselves. Wearing a vintage Hermes scarf passed down from your grandmother costs nothing. Attending the same country club where your great-grandfather was a founder costs nothing if membership is hereditary. But these traditions signal something powerful. You belong to a world most people cannot enter. Psychologists call this the authenticity bias. People trust what seems authentic and historic more than what seems new and flashy. A broke aristocrat wearing vintage clothing from heritage brands is seen as refined and traditional. A wealthy nouveau riche person buying the same items new might be seen as trying too hard. The perception gap is enormous, even when the actual garments are nearly identical. The broke aristocrat wins the status game not through purchasing power, but through inherited appearance and narrative. Let's talk about the psychology of perception and assumption. People make rapid judgments based on very limited information. If you meet someone at an event and they reference their family's history in a particular industry, mention a private school you've never heard of, or casually discuss experiences that require insider knowledge, you adjust your perception of them instantly. You assume they have resources. You assume they have connections. You assume they belong to a higher tier. These assumptions become self-fulfilling. People treat them better. Doors open. Opportunities appear. None of this required the aristocrat to lie or even spend money. It required them to understand and leverage existing perceptions. The psychology of inheritance is also crucial here. Inherited status is different from earned status in how the brain processes it. When someone earns wealth through hard work, we see them as having overcome obstacles. When someone inherits status, we see them as naturally fitting into their position. This might sound unfair, and it is, but it's how human psychology works. We have deep evolutionary reasons for respecting existing hierarchies. Aristocratic families exploit this by emphasizing their lineage, their history, their place in society's fabric. They're not new money desperately seeking acceptance. They're old money quietly assuming their rightful place. The psychology is passive rather than aggressive, which makes it more effective. Now let's examine the role of scarcity in maintaining status. Ironically, if a broke aristocrat suddenly became wealthy, they might lose some of their appeal. Part of what makes them fascinating is the apparent contradiction between their status and their actual bank balance. This contradiction creates a narrative. It humanizes them. It makes them seem genuine rather than mercenary. Wealthy new money people feel the need to display their wealth constantly. Broke aristocrats don't, because their status doesn't depend on visible consumption. This actually enhances their position. They seem above the need to prove anything. Psychologically, we respect this. We see it as true confidence. Let's discuss the networking advantage. Broke aristocrats gain access to exclusive networks not through wealth, but through heritage. They attend galas where they know the other attendees because their families have socialized together for generations. They receive invitations to private dinners because people want to be associated with their family name. These networks are where real deals happen, where opportunities emerge, where marriages occur that merge family fortunes. A broke aristocrat's grandson might marry the daughter of a billionaire, suddenly creating massive wealth. But even if that doesn't happen, the network itself is invaluable. It provides mentorship, information, support, and opportunities that money simply cannot buy. If you like the way we're breaking down these invisible systems of advantage, please consider liking this video. It helps us create more content like this. The psychology of gatekeeping is also at play. Every exclusive community has gatekeepers, people who decide who belongs and who doesn't. Broke aristocrats often become gatekeepers because they understand the system, and because they have the social credibility to enforce the gates. A broke aristocrat on the board of an exclusive club can influence who gets admitted. This gives them real power despite their lack of liquid wealth. It allows them to trade in influence, which is often more valuable than money. They can do favors for people who have money, building debts that those wealthy people will later repay. Power and influence, not cash, are the actual currency in these circles. Let's explore status anxiety and how broke aristocrats avoid it. Typically, people experience status anxiety when they feel their position is unstable or under threat. But broke aristocrats experience less status anxiety than their wealth alone would suggest, because their status is rooted in something they believe is unchangeable: their family history. They were born into their position. No economic downturn can take away their ancestry. No poor quarterly earnings can erase their legacy. This psychological security is incredibly valuable. It allows them to take long-term views, to be patient, to avoid desperate decisions. Meanwhile, newly wealthy people constantly worry about losing their status, which makes them anxious and sometimes reckless. The broke aristocrat's psychological advantage is this deep sense of security. Consumption patterns reveal much about the broke aristocrat's mindset. Instead of constantly buying new things, they maintain and wear heirloom items. Instead of displaying wealth through excess, they display it through restraint and sophistication. A broke aristocrat might own one expensive watch that belonged to their grandfather, which they've had serviced for 30 years. This signals value differently than a nouveau riche person constantly buying new watches. The psychology of conspicuous consumption versus inconspicuous consumption matters enormously. Old money doesn't need to advertise. New money does. This gives the broke aristocrat an advantage even though they have less cash available. The role of education in perpetuating this system cannot be overstated. Broke aristocrats often attend the same elite schools as wealthy people, partly through scholarship programs that value family heritage, partly through legacy admissions, partly through their ability to navigate the application process effectively. Once in these schools, they form friendships and connections with wealthy peers. These bonds, forged in youth, last lifetimes. They're far more valuable than any financial transaction. A broke aristocrat who went to the right school might call someone they knew there 30 years ago and ask for a job or an introduction. The wealth of their peer has grown in the intervening decades, but the friendship remains equal. This is a profound advantage. Let's discuss the psychology of belonging and in-group preference. Humans have a deep psychological need to belong to groups. We prefer people who seem similar to us, who speak our language, both literally and figuratively, who understand our references and our worldview. Aristocratic families have spent generations developing a particular culture, a way of speaking, a set of values, a perspective on the world. Members of this group instantly recognize each other and prefer each other. This in-group preference is so strong that it often overrides economic considerations. A broke aristocrat might get a job opportunity over a wealthier person from outside the group simply because the decision-maker feels greater affinity with them. They seem trustworthy. They seem like us. Psychology backs this up. We trust our in-group members more readily than outsiders, even when the outsiders might be objectively more qualified. The concept of cultural capital is related but distinct. Cultural capital refers to non-financial assets, education, taste, manners, knowledge of how to navigate sophisticated spaces. Broke aristocrats inherit enormous cultural capital. They know how to dress for every occasion, what fork to use, how to discuss art and literature with confidence, how to move through elite spaces without seeming out of place. This cultural capital was acquired through osmosis, through growing up in particular environments, through being taught by parents and grandparents who understood these codes.